Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Tonight, auto workers get buyout offers from Stellantis. Plus, the downtown mission is raising dollars to build a fence around the back of the building. It's in response to concerns from neighbors. New policies being proposed at Essex County Council, all about public conduct after a meeting was cut short last month. And we are learning more about your traditions. Those who have immigrated to Windsor tell us about what connects them to home. We begin with auto workers in Windsor facing a familiar proposition. Stellantis employees were given information about buyout packages this week. We sent our Dale Molnar out to the plant gate at the Windsor Assembly Plant to find out whether eligible workers are ready to go or not.
Just tell people to leave, fix the pension. It's 25 years old since it was last adjusted.
This worker echoes the sentiments of a number of people we talked to leaving the plant. Many are not ready to take the deal.
I don't know. I'm just not ready right now. My life, not ready.
Yeah.
Still got kids in school.
Yeah, I know.
I got enough seniority. I don't mind doing what I'm doing right now.
No, I'd like to stay till 40 years, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I enjoy the job. Yeah, I do hoist.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Isn't it a good deal?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Not too sweet.
According to worker Glenn McFadden, the company is offering workers with enough seniority to retire with full pension $60,000 plus a $20,000 car voucher. She has 35 years seniority, so it's good enough for her.
This electric vehicle, I think, is the way of the future. I do know that it takes a lot less manpower to build the electric vehicles. So, you know, it's a good way to get rid of a little bit of workforce, offer us a little bit of a sweet deal, and do what's best for everyone.
Auto expert John McElroy says Stellantis is trying to trim its workforce along with the other Detroit automakers. He has a couple of theories. He believes they see something on the horizon, such as a recession, or maybe it's just because the company is getting ready to bargain contracts on both sides of the river this September.
But they clearly think that they've got to lower their costs here. And it's an odd occurrence because car sales are going quite well, profits are going quite well. So they're making cuts when times look good. And that's why I think there's something out there on the horizon they do not like.
Stellantis has not offered much of an explanation for the buyouts, only that it wants to make its operations more efficient. The company would not reveal how many workers are taking the buyouts. McFadden tells CBC News workers have until June 30th to take advantage of the offers. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
Meanwhile, Stellantis shared its first quarter results today. The company says net revenue is up by a bit, but they're cautious about the year's outlook. There have been improvements in chip supply, according to today's release. The company has also seen a rise in the number of battery electric vehicle sales compared to previous quarters. Nearly 2 months after a public town hall highlighted problems around the downtown mission, a plan to install a fence is in the works. But it's not coming fast enough for neighbors who say litter, drug use, and other crime isn't getting better. The CBC's Jason Vio brings us the latest.
Needles, broken glass, trash. Those are just a few of the issues neighbors across from the downtown mission say they've been experiencing ever since it fully moved there last year.
I'm here for 50 years. And I think I deserve in my last years to be in peaceful neighborhood.
But the crime and public intoxication residents spoke about at this public meeting in March make it far from peaceful. At that time, one solution was to install fencing around the building that backs onto Pallisher on all three sides to keep guests at the mission relatively contained. And it's taken months to get to this point, getting feedback from community partners such as police and the Downtown Business Improvement Association.
Obviously, reaching out to our community for whether it be companies who are in the fencing business or not, if they want to come and support this project with gifts in kind, expertise, financial donations. We need all of those to happen for us to be able to move forward.
She says the fence will likely be a chain link style for visibility, allowing police to see in and staff to see out. The downtown mission also plans to install lights in the area where the fence is going, and neighbors across the street are hopeful this will all help.
It's better than doing nothing. Like, at least you're doing something rather than complaining, okay, nothing is being done. At least you're doing something, you're starting somewhere, and then you can build upon it, and you see how it's going to react and what the reaction is going to be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the problem's still going to be there, but at least they won't be around on the road or sitting in our backyard, because they're always in our backyard, and they won't manage to like get in that stuff. So I guess it will help the problem.
It's not going to look like a prison. Yeah, so it's going to look really nice.
Downtown City Councillor Ronaldo Agostino is personally helping to raise money, setting up a GoFundMe, although the cost right now remains unclear.
And that's not to say that the city won't invest in this. It's not to say that I won't use any ward funds. It's not to say any of that. You know, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get as many people involved in this project as possible, because the more people that are involved, the more people that will be invested in our downtown, in our community, and they'll feel like they can take ownership of it.
But the fence isn't going up right away and won't be installed before May 26th. That's the deadline for companies to submit quotes. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
A public meeting last month at Essex County Council is the focus of new rules being debated tonight. Politicians are looking at putting in place a new public conduct policy. The meeting will be held virtually. They haven't held a meeting in person since early April.
Quiet. Meeting's been adjourned. They're going to try to find a venue that will handle more people.
That's from a special meeting of County Council last month. The Civic Center was packed, people spilling out and into the halls. County Warden Hilda McDonald ended things early, in part because of the overflowing crowd, but also because of safety concerns.
We never had any kind of disruption like that before. I've been doing this since 2006. Our clerk, who's been here for decades, same thing. We've never had that kind of disruption before, but it wasn't expected to that degree. Did we think we'd have more people than 10? Yes. Did we think we'd have 250? No. But yes, and even the building itself was not designed for big crowds like that. We were concerned even if there would have been a fire. So this is all about making sure that everyone has safety in mind and can be taken care of, because we do have that responsibility to keep ourselves, our staff, and our public safe when they come into our building.
These visitor policies already exist in places like Toronto and Ottawa. So here's what politicians will vote on tonight. The policy would aim to end frivolous, vexatious, and unreasonable behavior, but it's not supposed to limit people who might make things difficult. The visitor policy would require people to sign in and be screened through security. It would also prohibit weapons, air horns, and megaphones. A trespass policy would give security the ability to remove people from the Civic Center. It would also come with an appeal process. Anyone accused of breaking the code of conduct would be able to get the ruling reviewed. An expert says these policies need to walk a fine line.
Public spaces that are common sort of venues for public expression should remain open to the public. So that doesn't mean that I can hold a protest in the mayor's office. But it probably does mean that I can hold a protest outside of a municipal council meeting. Again, what's the scope of that right? And all rights in the charter are subject to reasonable limits. So figuring out where that line is of reasonable limits is really like the challenging question in all of this.
Keep an eye on our website for the outcome of tonight's meeting. A warning now that this next story deals with the subject of suicide. Police have arrested and charged a Toronto area man accused of distributing sodium nitrite online to people who used it to kill themselves. Authorities here launched an investigation after a British newspaper reported that Kenneth Law had sold the lethal drug to people in the UK and the US. CBC's Thomas Dagla has more.
Gary Cooper's brother describes him as brilliant, loved and missed since Gary took a toxic substance last year mailed from Canada to end his life.
He found this website, this forum, before he could get better, so he didn't get a chance to heal. He would still be here now.
Lee Cooper says he was surprised and relieved when he heard police near Toronto had arrested Kenneth Law, the Mississauga man accused of selling sodium nitrite online to people at risk of suicide. The 57-year-old made a brief court appearance by video link, speaking only to confirm his date of birth. Law faces 2 counts of counseling or aiding suicide as police look for more alleged victims.
We're aware that packages were shipped to over 40 countries.
Over the phone last week, Law denied all allegations.
I don't know what's the scope of what I can say, and I hope you can understand why. This has been a very distressing experience.
Families of sodium nitrite victims have been calling for a notorious suicide forum to be shut down. Anonymous users discuss methods of suicide and have posted about Law's companies. In recent days, users in several countries who said they'd ordered Law's products reported receiving police wellness checks out of the blue.
It's just a shame that things like this couldn't have happened sooner. A lot of lives could have been saved, but a lot more are still ready to be saved.
Sodium nitrite has legitimate uses in food preparation, but when ingested in pure form, it's known to turn red blood chocolate brown.
You can even have seizures and go into coma, and you can die because of this change in the hemoglobin.
Law remains in detention, still awaiting a bail hearing. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
Questions and accusations continue to swirl around the case of a federal MP who was reportedly targeted by the Chinese government. Security documents reveal that Canadian officials knew about the efforts of foreign interference 2 years ago, but they did not inform Conservative MP Michael Chong about alleged threats against his family in China. The Prime Minister says new directives are being put in place to ensure information is shared. CBC's Rafi Bujikanian reports.
Even after meeting with CSIS, the Prime Minister and the Public Safety Minister, the MP allegedly in Beijing's crosshairs still has questions.
What is new here, what is at issue, is that the government did nothing about a person in Canada that was targeting me and my family and targeting other members of Parliament.
That person, the Globe and Mail reported, based on a nearly 2-year-old CSIS document it has seen, is a member of China's State Security Service. And the newspaper reports it's Zhao Wei, a Chinese diplomat stationed in Toronto. CBC News has not independently verified this reporting.
I think the Prime Minister and the government, ministers, have to come clean about who knew what and when.
Today, the Prime Minister suggested it was the spy agency which had decided not to flag the intelligence about Chong.
CSIS made the determination that it wasn't something that needed to be raised to a higher level because it wasn't a significant enough concern.
Well, the official opposition says that can't be right.
It is impossible to believe that he was not made aware of these threats 2 years ago when they were documented by his own intelligence services. How does the Prime Minister expect us to believe such a ridiculous claim?
But a former director of the spy agency warns against oversharing with elected officials.
There is some perception out there that everything that CSIS knows should be passed up the chain. It doesn't work that way. This case may be an easy one. There may be other cases where the information may be more sensitive and it may be very hard to pass that information on.
We're making it very, very clear to CSIS and all our intelligence officials that when there are concerns that talk specifically about any MP, particularly about their family, those need to be elevated, even if CSIS doesn't feel that it's a sufficient level of concern for them.
Repeatedly asked about consequences for the diplomat in question, the Canadian government says there would be some upon evidence of criminal activity. The Chinese embassy here has not responded to our requests for comment. Rafi Bujikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Russia is accusing Ukraine of launching a drone attack on the Kremlin. It's being characterized as a failed attempt to assassinate Russian President Vladimir Putin. And Moscow says it reserves the right to retaliate. CBC's Briar Stewart reports.
In daylight, people can be seen on top of the dome of the Kremlin Senate. It's part of what's supposed to be a heavily secured fortress that Russia has accused Ukraine of trying to attack overnight. This video hasn't been verified, but the Kremlin claims its military and defense systems brought down 2 drones. Russian officials are calling it a terrorist attack, an attempt to kill President Vladimir Putin, whom they say was staying at a residence outside the city. Ukraine's president, who's in Helsinki, denied his country is involved.
We don't attack Putin or Moscow. We fight on our territory. We are defending our villages and cities.
U.S. officials say they haven't been able to verify Russia's claims, but have their doubts.
I would take anything coming out of the Kremlin with a very large shaker of salt.
Over the weekend, Russia blamed Ukraine for striking a fuel depot in Crimea. But if there was a foiled attack on the Kremlin, it's brought the war even closer to the capital. Moscow has promised retaliation, and the country's former president said there are no options left except to physically eliminate Zelensky and his clique.
What really became suspicious is, how come the air defense system didn't catch this object before?
This Russia expert says the fact that Moscow publicized this apparent strike when it has concealed other attacks suggests this is political.
I think what he needs is the domestic support, and this really would give him sort of the domestic agreement from the population to sort of hit harder. So yes, I think this could be a sort of there's an internal component to this.
Even as Ukraine is about to launch its counteroffensive, Russia insists that it's going ahead with its annual Victory Day military parade, but with tighter security. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
A live look outside there. We've got your weather coming right up. Colette Kennedy is with us now for weather. Colette, all this gray, it's too much. It's got to go away.
We've had it. Today was the last straw.
I'm with you. Yes.
Yes, we want to get out of this pattern. And you know what? We are climbing our way out of it. So we really do have some improvement. I know a few showers still possible this evening, but then we'll see less and less of it. So they become much more isolated where we even get any wet weather as we go into tomorrow and Friday. So things are looking up, okay? 11 degrees. And in fact, that's our daytime high. Seasonal for this time of year is about 18. So really, it's not just the wet weather, the gray skies, but running on the cool side as well. And you see some of the other numbers not even getting to the double digits in many cases, not just southwestern Ontario, but much of southern Ontario as a whole. And then you add in a wind, the flow that's coming from the north, the sustained winds here, but we've been seeing some of those wind gusts closer to 50 kilometers an hour and kind of the pocket there, I'd say between about Chatham, Kent, and really towards St. Thomas, where we've seen those winds even a little more blustery through the afternoon and these early evening hours. And so those will begin to ease as we go into the later evening and overnight. So at least we'll see the winds dropping somewhat. You could still see, as I put this in motion, it's on a 3-hour summary here, that counterclockwise circulation with this area of low pressure. So it's an upper low that's been kind of cut off, and it just brings those bands around. And at times, you know, maybe dry, and then you get a band of rain coming through, and it can be a little bit heavier here and there. So we have had to keep that umbrella handy. What you'll notice here, though, in southwestern Ontario is we're more on the kind of western edge of this now as it is finally sliding east. So we're going to see ourselves released from the influence of it. So still some of these showers this evening. It's still a little bit breezy until that relaxes. Then through the overnight, we're going to get some gradual clearing coming through. So through much of the overnight, still towards London, we'll see the cloud cover, but back towards Windsor. Even Chatham, Kent starting to break out of it. I think I put mostly cloudy as the icon, but it will be releasing towards morning. We'll see fewer and fewer of those clouds. And then it becomes somewhat variable through the day tomorrow. So call it a mix of sun and cloud. It just means it's sometimes more cloud than others. This batch of moisture that wants to come in Friday, I see a lot of this actually pulling north. So I'm not super concerned about it. I'm not saying there isn't a chance here. You see it there on the model, but I've just put in kind of an isolated shower. I'd say our risk around 30% as we go into Friday, and then the weekend is still looking good. So here's some of that clearing I put in. It'll be a little slower for Chatham, Kent, and Sarnia, and so that's why I've left a mostly cloudy icon through the overnight hours. And then what else happens here? We start to see things warming up. So 15 for the high tomorrow, closer to seasonal on Friday, and then seasonal or above as we get into the weekend. So that's the payoff that's coming, Katerina.
There you go. Colette, that is a forecast that I love to see.
Yes,
Thank you
so much better. You're welcome.
So much better. When we come back, more stories of immigration from our Creating Space event. Stay with us. We're sharing more stories with you of people's immigration journeys to Windsor. Tonight, I want you to meet Fatima Gull. Fatima is 11 years old and immigrated from the UK about 3 years ago. She says although she's settled into Windsor life, it's been tough to be away from family.
My family lives back in the UK, but my mom's side of the family lives in Canada, so I got to see them, but I had to move away from my other family. It's easier now because I made some new friends. I have a really good school. I really liked tea when I was in England. I really like to drink tea from a really young age, and I still do drink tea.
And does that make you feel connected to the UK?
Yeah.
The coronation of King Charles is just days away, and excitement is building in many corners of the Commonwealth. But in Jamaica, some residents are less than thrilled. Ellen Morrow reports on a movement there to remove Charles as head of state.
This is Emancipation Park in Kingston, the capital of Jamaica. And that statue there behind me is a tribute to the hundreds of thousands of people stolen from Africa and enslaved on this island for centuries under British rule. So as preparations for the coronation are going on in London, this country is getting ready to ditch the monarchy. The government here planning to hold a referendum with the goal of becoming a republic and removing Charles as head of state by 2025. And it's the painful legacy of slavery that's driving that movement. We've been here for several days talking to lots of people who've told us that removing Charles as head of state is important for Jamaica's future and its identity. We talked to a group of students on their last day of high school getting ready to be this country's future, and this is what they told us.
It further pushes Eurocentric ideals because I feel like we'd like to have our own Caribbean identity, and I feel like the presence of a monarchy really impedes that.
Are we really emancipated if we still have a head of government, a monarchy which is honestly archaic in nature?
It's not just about cutting ties and removing Charles as head of state. There's also a demand here for an official apology from the royal family, which was linked to the slave trade from the very beginning, and for there to be reparations for all the suffering inflicted on this island and for the immeasurable wealth that was taken from it.
We plan to petition the king and to seek reparations through that petition, because as the Queen and now the King's subjects, we suffered injustices, and they were responsible for us.
Jamaica is not the only country having this conversation. Barbados removed the monarch as head of state in 2021, and several other Caribbean countries are contemplating this move as well. A reckoning for the brutality of British colonialism in this region as Charles's coronation looms. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Kingston, Jamaica.
And that is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor, and you can find us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.